me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
The missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and but the mother has went through a wall, came home, now they can't find her.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Once I told a lie, and I told my family, I had to keep lying.
McSherman is a demon.
We haven't cleared anybody.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is another live stream where we are deep diving into the Chris Watts case. We'll be using some interviews from a coworker and looking through some discovery files where we actually see another interview of somebody who never gets really talked about, but it is a very interesting aspect in this case. This has been highly requested by one of my moderators, Florida Bass Fishing. So we are finally ready to kind of dig into this aspect of the case, and it involves numerous people out at the crime scene, also known as the burial site, dump site, whatever you want to call it, before the bodies were recovered. So thank you so much for letting me know that my sound is good, Johnny. Appreciate that. And hello, everybody in chat. I see Melly and Mally. Good to see you guys. And Wendy. Of course, Florida Bass is here. So glad. Grateful Mama, Wanderers, Christina, Adrian, thank you so much for the PayPal today. I love and appreciate you so much and all your support that you bring to this channel. Thank you so much. And the Facebook group. Thank you for helping me out with that too. And everyone else in chat, thanks for being here. Debbie Fox is here. Tony. All right, we can get started because we've got some stuff to go through. Here's some tea for everybody. Pass around and get settled. Hi, Angie. So like I said, we're going to be listening to a little bit of a coworker's interview, and we are also going to be looking through some of the discovery files. So Allison's here. Hello, Keenly. All right. So as you know, this is the diagram of the crime scene. Just to give you a little visual, we might pull this back up and reference it. So we won't listen to the whole interview. The thing about this coworker is he was interviewed more than once. He was interviewed one time and left out the information that he had been to the crime scene. So then they had to re-interview him and pretty much follow up on why he left out that detail. And the first interview that we have is only a written interview in the discovery file. So you have to go to the discovery files to read it. And then the second interview that he did, we do have an audio for, but it needs to be noted that the second interview that we listened to, Chris Watts had already pretty much been arrested and given his first confession. So when they re-interview Troy, you know, they pretty much have their guy and they're ready to convict Chris and move the stuff towards a future trial. So the plea deal was not on the table just yet. It's still the first week of the investigation, but they had their guy in custody. So, and that's also noteworthy. And yeah, for some reason, we don't know why, but Troy, the coworker, lied numerous times. And he's just kind of been somebody that we scratch our head at, because if you have nothing to hide, then it should be straightforward, no lying and all that, and no hiding things. Tony says, Troy has always been odd to me. Yep. Troy is super suspicious. He's shifty. Jay, good to see you. Haven't seen or talked to you in a minute. Glad you're here. Hey, everyone, glad to be a member and a mod, and we're happy to have you here for 8 months, a member too. I know you've been around longer, but I really appreciate you. That Fire Stick meeting Friday night is also very suspicious. Yes, and that's the thing is we'll dig into Troy McCoy's whole interviews, but tonight we're just going to focus on the one aspect, and that's the fact that if this had gone to trial, these issues would have been beneficial to the defense and not so much the prosecution. And when so many people wonder, like, why did this have to end in a plea deal? Why didn't it go to trial? There's so many reasons that I think that it ended in a plea deal. And I believe one of them has to do with just uncertain circumstances and unfortunate circumstances, like Troy being at the crime scene and lying about it and needing to be re-interviewed. It just would not have worked for the state's favor at trial. Jurors, I think, would have been very suspicious of it too, just like we all are. And hello, Valerie. Good to see you and Unravel. So good to see you guys. Hey, Zoe. Okay. So now that we've looked at this picture, where should we start? Let's see. I've got some stuff to pull up to kind of help me move this along. All right. So the other thing that's interesting about Troy is he does not mention Nicholkessinger in his interviews or knowledge of an affair. And Nicholkessinger does not mention Troy. Now, why is that important? Well, it's kind of a small group of people, and it's odd that Anthony Brown, another coworker, knew of Chris having a girlfriend in the office, but Troy never really mentions that. And sometimes in cases and in interviews, it's not so much what they do mention, but it's about what they're purposely kind of leaving out or coincidentally leaving out. Okay, so we'll leave that open too. Like maybe it's a coincidence that they just never knew each other. The reason why I just find that odd and kind of hard to believe that they never knew each other is because there's a part in Troy's interview where he starts to talk about a girl in the office and then he slips up and changes the topic. We'll get to that when we listen to him. But here, this is an also interesting part. Give me 1 second. I'm going to be kind of blowing my nose and coughing off the mic. I'm still kind of recovering, so I'm sorry if there's going to be some pausing. Okay, so the day that Shanann has a Thrive party. Now remember, Thrive is the MLM company that she sold those patches through. That was her job. She had a party in January, the week of her last birthday that she celebrated on Earth. And Troy McCoy was at the house, at the Watts house at that party. And Troy's wife, Juanita, she babysat kids for a living, and she also sold Thrive as an person underneath Shanann. So Shanann signed her up, and she was part of Shanann's team. So they're at the party at the house. Troy kind of downplays his friendship with Chris in his interviews, but yet he's at the house at this Thrive party. So that's also noteworthy and interesting. And then also, as you can see, Nicholkessinger on the screen here, she, as we know, Googled Shanann and Chris numerous times before she ever even worked with them. The day that Troy is at the house for that Thrive party is one of the days that Nicole Googles Shanann.
In the shadows and behind a computer screen. On the same day Shanann threw a Thrive party at her house, the mistress was searching her on the internet. This is
So the same day she throws the Thrive party, Troy McCoy here on the left, that's his wife, Juanita. This is the party. They all made their little vision boards, I believe. And she's Googling, and everything's public on Shanann's Facebook. So she would have seen Troy. She would have seen these party pics posted. And I see new members joining. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really appreciate that. Rachel, thank you so much and welcome. And I see another Zoe. So now we have 2 Zoes. Welcome and thank you for becoming a member. And everyone else, thank you guys for being here. Hit that like button as well. Yeah, there's little tidbits in the documentary that sometimes when you watch it one time, you kind of miss. But yes, this is Juanita. She's would babysit children for a living. Also participated in Thrive. You can see the patches on her and her husband, Troy. Troy worked with Chris for, I believe, almost 2 years at the time of the crime. Hello, Kelly, Diamond, James. Good to see you guys. Yes, stalking them. She was cyber stalking them. Melly, thank you for gifting a membership. Appreciate you. And welcome to the new member. And if you got that membership, Melly's right in chat if you want to give her a shout out. And hello, Marshall Dove. Okay, so just to give you a visual of who Juanita and Troy are. All right, moving right along. Now, the whole oddity in the title of this, Oddities from the crime scene, right? Let's get to it. So, part of his interview is in the discovery. And then, of course, they continue the interview and they have a written aspect of it in the discovery as well. So I'm going to read that. He talks about the morning working with Chris. Now, remember, Monday morning, that's when the district attorney alleges everyone was dumped at that site. We do not know if that's actually true or not. That was just the district attorney's and the state's theory. So we don't have a time of death given to us in the autopsies. So that, again, just like the defense would have had their theory, this is the only information we have is from the prosecution side and their theory of things. So McCoy said he heard Watts say that Shanann had missed a doctor's appointment earlier in the day. McCoy said Watts said he was getting worried about Shanann because no one knew where she was. McCoy said eventually Watts said he was going to leave and go home to see if he could figure out what happened to Shanann. McCoy then commented that Watts needed to defecate and pulled his truck up to the south side of the holding tank at Survey 1029. So the bodies were found at Survey 319. That was not the only well site that Chris was at that day. So that's another thing that we talk about with the timeline being so tight before coworkers show up. He wasn't at Survey 319 all day. So he ends up taking a dump, sorry to use that term, at 1029, and McCoy is telling the officers about it. McCoy said he didn't initially think this was unusual, but after all the media attention this case had received, he got to thinking that Watts may have buried some evidence by the tanks when he claimed he had to defecate. So that's what's not making sense to me is, and you'll find out when we hear his interview more, he's thinking that Chris buried evidence at 1029. Okay, well, the bodies are at 319. Keep that in mind. McCoy said he ended his day on Monday around 4 p.m. after all his employees had cleared from the field. McCoy said he did not have some short text message. He did have some short text message with Watts on Monday evening, but he did not speak with Watts. McCoy said he was asking about Shanann, and Watts responded Watts's responses were very short. McCoy said Tuesday, August 14th, 2018, he started his day like most others by leaving his house early in the morning and driving to the Anadarko office in Platteville, McCoy said he met with his team and made plans for the day. McCoy said he learned from Luke Eppel that Watts would not be at work on Tuesday. McCoy said he had got a burrito from the mobile vendor and went out to another oil well site to assist one of his guys at the site. McCoy said this site was at the County Road 22 and County Road 31, approximately 7 miles from the Anadarko office. McCoy said after he left the site, he went to a training located near the intersection of County Road 47 and County Road 4, which is south and east of Hudson, Colorado. McCoy said the site is about 25 miles from the Anadarko office. McCoy said this site is an oil pad which uses pneumatic processes, some oil term. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that right here. Pneumatic, I don't know. And this was part of the training. So he leaves the office, goes about 25 miles from the office, and he's conducting a training session with somebody new. McCoy said he was at this training until 1 p.m. McCoy said he left the training site and decided to drive back to 319. So remember, Chris is with Troy at Survey 1029, where he takes the dump, and Troy. Sorry about that. And Troy says that he thought this was unusual. Give me 1 second. Sorry, my little 3-year-old's trying to FaceTime me. And I'm like, honey, I'm live right now. You can't call me. All right. So Troy is saying after his training session that he decided to drive back to Survey 319. He was with Watts at 1029 where he took the dump. And Troy said he got suspicious because he thought when he buried the dump out there that he might have buried evidence. Okay, so then why is he going to 319 here, right? So McCoy said he wanted to go back to 319 because he had been thinking about Watts and the reports he had been seeing on the news about Shanann, Bella, and Celeste still missing. So remember, they haven't been found yet. Chris has not been arrested at this point on Tuesday. McCoy said he wanted to check 319 to see, this is a quote, direct quote from Troy, see if I could see anything out of the norm. I asked McCoy to expand on what he was thinking, and he said it was a combination of things that was making him suspicious. McCoy said the fact that Watts had parked in a strange spot by the wellhead, Watts was wearing unusual clothing, Watts was more quiet than usual on Monday at 11 a.m., Shanann and the kids went missing, then Watts was short with McCoy during text messages from the night before. McCoy said taking all of these things into consideration started making him suspicious. McCoy commented further about Shanann not taking her phone and car keys. Hold on. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't paused or muted. And thought that was odd as well. McCoy said he even spoke with his wife, so Juanita, who we saw in that picture, about the strangeness of the circumstances on Monday night. McCoy said he arrived at 319 on Tuesday afternoon. The gate was open, and there was a water truck on the pad from the Northern Plains Trucking. McCoy said he parked his truck by the wellhead near the same location Watts had parked on Monday. McCoy said just as he was getting out of his truck, the driver of the water truck approached him and asked McCoy to sign his job site analysis. So this water truck guy's got to get a signature from them to pretty much state like, yes, he was here and he did his job. As it was required procedure, McCoy said he told the driver of the water truck that he was there to look for a crescent wrench he may have dropped in the area. McCoy said he told the driver of the water truck that because McCoy didn't want to tell him he was there to possibly look for evidence of a missing person. So before we get to the water trucks guy's statement, just kind of want to go over this again. He sees Chris at 10:29. Chris takes a dump. Troy started thinking that was suspicious. Maybe he was bearing evidence. So then why the next day does he go not to 10:29 where he thought maybe he was bearing evidence with his poop? He goes to 3:19. And as he's there, the water truck guy is there as well. And he tells the water truck guy, "Oh, I'm just here because I'm looking for a crescent wrench." He didn't want to tell the water truck guy that he was possibly looking for evidence regarding the missing people. So very strange, because if they're missing, why aren't you like sharing the news? Like that would be the perfect opportunity to say to the water truck guy, hey, yeah, I'll sign your sheet. But just know that, have you seen anything suspicious out here? Because this person and her children are missing, and I'm kind of out here just looking to see if anything has stood out as odd. Have you seen anything weird, or have you heard about this case? Have you heard that this woman and her children are missing? All right. So Melanie, okay. Hey, Mel Mac, good to see you. I was just thinking about you today. Hope you're doing well. So do you guys kind of see the oddity here? They haven't been found dead yet. And Troy was with Chris at a totally different well site, where when he first states to officers, like, I started to get suspicious that, like, while he was burying his poop, that he might have been burying evidence. Like, first off, why would Troy think that there would be evidence that was going to be buried? Because they hadn't even been found dead yet. And he also goes on to say how nice of a guy Chris is, and this is all shocking to him. So then why, when he was burying his poop, did you think that he was possibly burying evidence tied to this crime? They haven't been found dead yet. You go to a totally different well site, and you run into the water truck guy, and then lie to the water truck guy while you're there and say, "Oh, I might have dropped a crescent wrench, so I'm just here looking for that." Like, why not share the news? Spread the news. Like, have you heard this woman, she's pregnant. Her 2 kids are missing. I work with this guy. I don't know. He was out here yesterday. Have you seen anything weird? What gets even more weird, let me just share my screen again, is there's just so many things weird with Troy, honestly. He states in his interview that we just read that he parked in the same spot that Chris had parked the day prior. And oddly enough, that is right near Shanann's shallow grave. And when you listen to the water truck guy's interview that I'll read, it's described as pretty much a strange parking spot. Water truck guy says nobody that he knows has ever really parked there. Unravel says that's suspicious, but not the picture of the car that blew up that he sent to Chris of a vehicle that looks like Shanann. I'm confused. Troy is so shady. Then Troy says he's looking for a wrench. You had the opportunity to share the news that a missing woman and child, something strange. Don't most people have their work clothes laid out for the work next day? And what's interesting too, James, is Chris had changed his clothes numerous times. So when we see him in Nate's footage, he's wearing like a dark colored shirt, looks black. When Troy describes him, he's wearing a blue shirt. And then when he gets home on the body camera, we see him in a gray shirt. So Chris changed numerous times. Avoiding talking about Shanann and the girls. Right. Why are you avoiding talking about them? They're only missing. And don't you want to spread the news about somebody missing? Troy talks a lot and yet says nothing. And you know what is interesting too is law enforcement calls Troy. And all this can be found if you guys listen to his whole interview and look, deeper into Troy. Law enforcement calls Troy and leaves a voicemail and says, hey, we know that you spent some time with Chris on Monday morning. We'd like to get, a statement from you to kind of talk to you about him. Call us back. Troy doesn't call back law enforcement. Instead, Troy leaves his training meeting and he goes to 319. And he goes there and he tells cops, I'm here. I went there because I was going to look for evidence. If you want to help cops out, you call them back and you return their phone call and you answer their questions. We don't need you to do your own little recons and snoop around and see what you can find. And if you want to help out in a missing person case, spread the news. Here's the water truck guy at the crime scene. Here's somebody that you can say like, hey, have you heard about this? I'm out here because I'm getting weird vibes from my coworker. And I thought like, well, what if I see something suspicious? He's right next to the shallow grave, almost as if he's blocking the view of the shallow grave from the water truck guy. You could maybe interpret it as that. Also, next to the grave is a rake head, or not the head, the handle part of a rake sticking up out of the ground. So you go there to see if any evidence or anything suspicious, and you don't notice that sticking up out of the ground. No, I don't think Chris is innocent at all. No, he had like he definitely premeditated all this. I wonder if NK was at work on the 14th. She called in. Was it the 14th? Do you guys remember? I believe she called in sick. And yes, they did dig up Chris's poop, in case you guys were asking. It's just too coincidental that Troy is at the crime scene alone before anyone even knew where the bodies were at. Oh, yeah, and he's Chris's best friend, too. Yes, and he also was somebody who sent Chris a picture of an oil well explosion that took place in Kansas. So as the investigation proceeds, even though there was very little that was kind of being done after Chris, quote unquote, confesses, they do look through his text messages with Troy. And we've gone through this on CDT's channel. We can dig deeper into it on another live stream, but their conversations with each other look like stuff is missing, like they had deleted things. And Troy's phone was never extracted. It was just recorded, like a recording of them looking through it and screenshots of their conversation. So it wasn't a real extraction. Troy was not really investigated. He was interviewed twice and they looked through their text messages. He sent Chris an explosion of an oil well in Kansas, and Chris responds like, wow, that's crazy or something. And there's more too about Troy. We'll get there. Thank you, Margie. Thank you so much. Great job as always, Amber. I'm so obsessed with the Watts murders. Hope you are feeling good. I'm feeling much better. I am. I'm slowly getting better every day. Thank you so much. And thanks for the super chat and for the baby gift that you sent. I know I already thanked you, but I just want to make sure that I express my gratitude to everyone who has been buying on the registry. I feel like no one was really investigated in this case. I know. And plus, once they get, the failed polygraph, quote unquote, failed polygraph, because we never really see the results. And they don't even ask about the kids on the polygraph. And that is important to ask, regardless of what everyone says. once they get Chris to kind of quote unquote confess, I mean, everything else was just done to kind of, we'll have it on record that we interviewed him and that we looked through their text messages. But we're not going to extract his phone. All right, so let's get to what the water guy's statement was. I know, Paul, I'm sorry. I couldn't prolong this live stream because I've been promising Florida bass fishing that we'd go through this. And, you know, I just got to keep trucking through. But yeah, I'm not 100%. I'm getting there. All right, so water truck guy. We got Troy. All right, so this guy's name is also Chris. And this is a supplemental report of his interview. Let me see. Yes, so this is his name. Right here. And his picture and all that of his ID is in the discovery as well. Okay, the following information was documented at the time it was gathered. The date of this report is not indicative of when the investigation occurred. On 8/16/2018, while at the Survey 319 tank, I spoke with a vacuum truck driver, Chris. Chris works for Complete. I'm leaving his last name out. I know it's in there, but I'm not about to just say it all. You know, leave some anonymity for him. But it is in that documents. Chris works for Complete Energy Services Incorporation and was on site to vacuum the crude oil from the catch pan on the east tank oil tank that the east oil tank drained into. I asked Chris about the oil well site process and what prompts him to respond to specific oil well sites. Chris explained Complete Energy Services is contracted by Anadarko Petroleum to remove the oil and or water from the oil tanks and separators located at many oil well sites. I asked Chris how often he was called to drain the oil tanks at 319. He said, it is not a high producing oil well, so it's not as often as most others. Chris said the last time he was at Survey 319 was on 8/14/2018 at approximately 1400 hours to vacuum the pit, which is the tank to contain the water separated from the crude oil. So he's there the day after allegedly the district attorney is claiming everyone was dumped there. Now, they could very well have been there the whole time while this Chris, the water truck guy, we'll call him, was there. So I asked Chris if he noticed anything different or unusual at the time. Chris said an Anadarko operator arrived at the site shortly after he did and parked east of the oil pump head. So water truck guy is there first. Troy arrives and drives his truck over, blocking the shallow grave. Okay, so he's in between the oil tanks and the shallow grave, his truck, Troy's truck. So as soon as this officer asks water truck guy if anything unusual, occurred, he mentions Troy. Chris, water truck guy, said an Anadarko arrived. Chris said that was unusual because he had never seen anyone park that far from the tank area. Should be noted that the area that Chris described is adjacent and near the area where Shanann's body was recovered. Chris said he didn't recognize the person, but was convinced he was an Anadarko employee because he was driving a dark, full-size pickup consistent with the Anadarko trucks. Chris said he spoke with the man who told him he was looking for a wrench he lost from leaving it out near the bumper or tailgate and to check on things. So again, Troy is blatantly lying to this water truck guy who's just there minding his own business, doing his job. I asked Chris if he was able to get the man's name. So this is what's interesting too, is the water truck guys interviewed, and then they find out like who this Anadarko guy is. So it's not like Troy came forward and was like, oh, by the way, like I ran into the water truck guy. Like, no, that's not what happened. He had to be interviewed after this information was kind of gathered. Re-interviewed, I should say. Chris said he did not know, but the man signed his electronic JSA. So the form that he asked Troy to sign, he didn't remember Troy's name, but he tells the officer, like, but I got it here on my form. When asked, Chris explained a JSA form is a job safety analysis document, and he completes them for each work site he works at. When an Anadarko employee is also present at the job site, he requests them to sign it, an electronic form. Chris said once his JSA was signed, he went back to vacuuming the holding tank, and the unidentified Anadarko employee drove off. I asked Chris if he was able to get a copy of the JSA form that was specific to the visit. He said he likely could, and shortly thereafter informed me it was available and could be emailed to me. After I provided my email address to Chris, I received an email from Brett Raitis, Complete Energy Services, so another employee from there, at 11:19 hours with the associated JSA form attached. I opened the attachment and observed two typed names with signatures below them. The first was Chris's name, the water truck guy, and a signature, and the second was Troy McCoy's name and signature. I contacted Commander Egon of the Frederick Police Department and informed him what I had learned and requested somebody contact and interview with Troy McCoy about his presence at 319 on 8/14/2018 at 11:21 hours. I forwarded via email to the Commander Egon the GSA form and provided an email. Nothing further. And that this whole thing is Detective Baumhover, who was the homicide detective at Frederick at the time. So, just gathering our thoughts. Why would Troy McCoy pull up there, park in between the shallow grave and the water truck guy, and then lie to the water truck guy about why he's there, but willingly signed the form and then skedaddled out of there? What was the point of Troy going there? He says that he tells the officer he went there to see if he could find any evidence, but he doesn't call the officers back when they're on his voicemail saying, we'd like to speak with you. It's just weird to me. Hi, Roxanne. Good to see you. I mean, is it weird to anybody else? I know that you guys, how do you not remember a name like Troy McCoy, right? He's just, the water truck guy is just there doing his job, like mundane, blah, blah, blah. He has no idea that there's two bodies in those tanks and a shallow grave right behind Troy's truck, because Troy purposely parked there, in my opinion, for a reason. I'd change my name if I was him. I would definitely be changing my name if I was him, with all this weirdness that's come out. They just wanted to close the chapter, blame Chris, and never look back. Didn't want to tarnish perfect little Frederick, Colorado. Right. And the oil companies like, don't tie us in any of this. Keep us out of it. So why, a lot of people, I think they gave up with an easy case. Yeah, they got their conviction. They got their confession, even though the confession was a false one. And when I say that, it's because Shanann didn't kill the kids. That's the confession that Chris was arrested on. James says, I'm on the fence about Troy. And that's the thing too, is like, people really are like, well, why would they be involved? Troy knows way more than he's saying. Yeah, I don't know how he sleeps, honestly. And hello, Brooks. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well down there in Florida. Troy knows something. That poor water truck guy being out there not knowing what was out there. I know. Can you imagine? That would haunt me. That would haunt me. Okay, so the thing about Troy is you really have to we would have to take a whole live stream to listen to his interview very deeply, and we're not going to do that tonight. We'll listen to an excerpt of it, and I've read a little bit of the written part, but a lot of his talk is oil talk. Like we do this and we use this tool and blah, blah, blah. So when you first listen to Troy, you're just kind of like, okay, this guy's just an oil worker. Like, who cares? But then when you start hearing like that he lied to the water truck guy, that he had a voicemail from the officers that he didn't call back, but he goes there to look for evidence. I mean, even in that written part that we read at the beginning of this live stream, when he's talking about Survey 1029, he says that he thought Chris was burying evidence when he buried the poop that he pooped out there. So then why wouldn't you have gone back the next day to 1029 to see if that evidence was actually buried with his poop? Instead, you go to 319, which coincidentally is the site that their bodies are at. I wonder if he moved his vehicle when he saw water truck guy driving towards Survey to hide where Shanann was buried. Right. It's just like so odd. And even the water truck guy's notes, he's like, I never seen an Anadarko employee like park over there. And this water truck guy, like, he has no association to any of these people. He's just there doing his job. And he's telling the officers, like, this was unusual. Yeah, I was out there. He told me he was looking for a crescent wrench. So Baumhover is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Someone was out here? Okay, you got that guy's name? All right, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Interviews Troy. And Troy says, well, you know, I told him I was looking for a wrench, but really I was trying to help you guys out. No, it's weird. Oh, crap, so late. Appreciate everybody. Hey, Dustin, good to see you. It's okay that you're late. We'll let it slide. Troy was in financial trouble. He had bankruptcy under his belt. He, in his conversations with Chris, talks about how he applied to another job, hoping to get out of Anadarko, but didn't get that other job because they told him that he had a bad attitude. So he kind of flopped on some job interview to get out of the oil industry. So he definitely, and his wife, I mean, watching children doesn't really pay all that much, and neither do the MLMs, in my opinion, unless you're like one of the top people. So yeah, I think you could argue, and they had multiple children. Not his kids, but Juanita had previous children with somebody else. We've looked into Troy. And honestly, if you guys go to CD, if you Google, she's no longer on YouTube. She's doing other things outside of YouTube, like on TikTok. But if you Google, search bar in YouTube, CDT Watts, you'll find her channel, for those who don't know it. And we've deep dove into Troy on numerous live streams. And we're going to continue to here as well. There's just so much. It would be easy for you guys to kind of listen to that as well. If I remember correctly, Troy also never mentions NK in his interview. That made him suspicious to me. Right. And she never mentions him. She talks about how Chris was on the phone with a friend, and the officer says, do you know the friend's name? And she says, nope. And I didn't ask. Okay. But you ask him about every other thing. Got it. Dustin, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate that. Appreciate you always being here too. Yes, Paul T. Her lawyer scrubbed her off the internet. Roxanne says, "Who is that girl, CDT?" I wish, she would join us and be around, but haven't talked to her in a while. Sadly. Very interesting, the people with money problems. Well, and that's the thing is like you could say, yeah, everyone's struggling, right? So it's like, is this interesting? In 2018, I don't know. I feel like it kind of had more weight, if that makes sense. Whereas now, I know, me too, Mel Mac. But I don't know. She never comes around. But like I said, you can find her on TikTok. Okay. Now let's listen to part of Troy McCoy's interview. So this is on a different channel. Gosh, I don't even know the name of this channel because I got the transcript up too so I could see it. Crime Tube, I guess. If you want to listen to his whole interview, it's there. And I'm starting at 49 minutes in. The interview is an hour and 25 minutes. This is his second interview. He had to be interviewed twice because of the information that came out about him being at Survey 319. He left that information out when he did his first interview. I know I never go on TikTok either, unfortunately. There's just so many things that I got my feet in, TikTok's really the last one. Oh, still listening. Sorry if I didn't say hi to anyone. Driving for 45 minutes per request of AAA. LOL, not an ad for them. Are you charging your battery or something? I really find it odd. Watts never mentions Troy's name to NK, especially talking about the workday. Right. I don't believe it. I think they all knew each other. All right.
Okay. So what do you do after you leave the training? And that's on 319, you said?
Yes, it's 319.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hang on. Now it just skips. I don't know why it does that. So I got to get to what was it? 49 minutes? And mind you, Troy, if you listen to his interview, in my opinion, he sounds nervous. He says things like, honestly, and he makes an excuse for his dry mouth. He's like, yeah, I'm going to have dental surgery, says something about dental surgery. It's just weird. It's very weird.
You had to be on the phone whenever we were wrapping up.
Okay. So what do you do after you leave the training?
Okay, there from that point, I've got everything here going through my head. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Because it's been since Monday since we've heard anything from Shanann.
Okay,
right?
Wait, let me stop you there.
Oh, you're fine.
So you said you got everything in your head. Tell me what that means.
Well, everything that's going on.
Yeah,
Chris took off
okay.
work, and I'm worried about his wife and his kids because I've known his wife and his kids, I've been over, hung out with Shanann, hung out with Bella and everything. So I'm like, what's going on here? And he's been real short with me on text messages, and there's been no news updates. I've been seeing, stuff coming out and people are looking for me, everybody's sharing it on Facebook. So I was like, well, nothing else. It's 1 o'clock. I don't have anything else to do. I'll head back out toward that 319 and, see if I see anything out of the norm and stuff like that.
He says, I don't got anything else to do. It's 1 o'clock. You could call back the law enforcement officer who left a voicemail asking you to return his call. And again, you thought he was suspicious burying stuff at 10:29 when he took a dump out there. So what made you go to 3:19?
Like that. And that's the same time that officer called me,
What prompts you to want to go to the 319?
because that was the first location we were at that morning.
Okay, just because, or
Yeah,
something's tripping your
honestly.
suspicion here, obviously.
Well, I mean, honestly, because I seen him in the different clothes. Okay, I seen him in that, and then, you know, and he just was short with me that day.
Okay.
You know, he wasn't really like engaging in conversations and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you know, 11 o'clock to noon, his wife's gone. You know,
Mhm.
supposedly, and you know, he thought that she went to a friend's house or whatever. I'm like, this is, you know, even in my head, it's not adding up.
So you've been thinking about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
And isn't it funny he uses the phrase his wife's gone? And he says, you know, that she wasn't picking up and all that. Like he's obviously talking about how she's not at the house and stuff, but like if you really like think about it, it's like interesting words to say. His wife's gone. Has more than one meaning, pretty much, is what I'm getting at. Yeah, I agree, Saffron. Interviewer doesn't trust him. I agree. Hi, Victoria.
As
Well, I love
Monday
my
went
guys
along
I work with. They're all like my brothers.
Yeah.
You know, honestly. You know, you can ask my whole group. I would do anything in the world for them, you know. I'd be there for them. They can talk to me about anything, you know, and everything. And I was like, man, this is just so weird because they're such a picture perfect couple. And then all of a sudden she's just gone,
Mhm.
you know.
Picture perfect couple. And all of a sudden she's just gone. He's really hung up on that gone word. Now, the reason I just remember too something that I was going to elaborate on after I read one of Florida Bass Fishing's comments. He says there's such a perfect picture perfect couple. Now, a couple live streams ago, we read an interview from another coworker who described how he had heard that Chris had a girlfriend in the office and that he had seen them standing extremely close to each other. Yeah, exactly, Jay. Why not use the word missing? Missing would have been more normal. Yeah, either poor guy never been around cops or right. Like what? Why is he so like nervous? Because he's being caught, you know, in a situation that just looks odd, right? And it's like, is it just coincidence? So another aspect that I remember is here Troy is saying, oh, there's such a picture perfect couple. But in Anthony Brown's interview, he said that he and Troy had spoken together about Shanann being missing. And Troy was the one who said, you know, is it possible that Shanann was seeing somebody from the MLM thrive? So to another coworker, Troy basically tries to accuse Shanann of like cheating. But to this officer, Troy is saying like, well, there's such a picture perfect couple. Why wouldn't you have kind of said something to this officer like, well, you know, and I was wondering because like we kind of suspected that maybe she was seeing somebody from her MLM. Instead, he plays the opposite. Oh, you know, they're just so picture perfect. I don't know. I just think that's weird. Tony says, I think he knew where she was and what happened, in my opinion. And that's where things get so crazy with Troy. What does he know? Why was he out there? Was he getting rid of evidence? Was he planting evidence? Was he hiding the view of the shallow grave from the water truck guy? You know, why lie about him being there? Why not call law enforcement back? Just so many things sounds weird with him. He didn't say that name, Paul, but I think that that's what everyone was kind of insinuating or kind of wondering. I mean, even Frankie Jr. kind of says something along the lines of that person in his interview. Yeah, that was the rumor. Yep. Yeah, Troy is a grade A BSer of the Amber or of the Amber Heard. Yeah. Didn't Watts tell Troy about the truck maybe being parked at someone else's house, or was that someone else? I'd have to go over that again. Chris didn't seem too nervous about Troy showing up at the site that morning, in my opinion. Yeah, and Troy says that everything seemed fine. And then the next day, like when he's in this interview, he's like, well, he was more quiet than usual. Right. Hey, House Huddle, good to see you. There was a Juanita that called in the tip line. We'll have to dig into that another night. We don't know if that was Troy's wife, but I mean, how many Juanitas do you know? Hi, Mina. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Hold on, I'm scrolling up. Okay.
And that didn't make any sense to me because by then we'd heard that the cell phone was there, the kids' medication was there, the purse was there at the house, everything. And Shanann and the girls were gone. That didn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
Because Shanann lives on that phone because that's what her business is that phone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I drove out to the 319. And as soon as I went to the gate was already open. There's a water truck driver on location.
Okay.
And from MPT. And I signed his JSA. So I parked out by the wellhead, and I didn't want to alert the guy that I was, out there looking for anything odd and suspicious or anything like that. So
you know what time that was?
It was around 2:00 or so. I arrived out there, and I talked to the gentleman and everything like that. And told him, I was like, well, I think, I might have forgot a crescent wrench or whatever, because I didn't want to tell him because I didn't know if I should look around the field or what I should do. So that's what I told him.
Okay.
And then I signed his JSA, and I turned around and looked at the clock, and it's like, it's so freaking late that by the time I get out of Survey Ranch and back to, the area around like County Road 22 and, 37, kind of like a baseline, if somebody needs me, then I'm going to be way too far away. So I went ahead and just got back in my truck after I signed his JSA and left location.
Okay. Why did you sign that?
Because I'm supposed to.
Okay.
What is
I
it?
have to sign that
What
JSA.
is a JSA?
Job site analysis.
Okay.
So these contractors that work for us, if they pull up on a location, they pull a tank, which he pulled the open top water pit is what he pulled. That's what he was hooked up to.
So this water truck driver, do you know who that is?
No, sir, I don't know.
And also he says, I didn't know if I should look around the field or what. So I just signed it and left. Yeah, interesting. So what was the point in you going there? Because if you did look around the field, you would have seen the rake head, the shallow grave, the fitted sheet out there, the black plastic bags, and you just happen to decide not to look around. It just is so odd. And the thing too is we find out that this water truck guy, he was assigned to go there before, like they know in advance when the water truck guy is going to be there. So did Troy just remember that the water truck guy was going to show up and he's like, crap, I got to make sure he doesn't see that shallow grave. I'm about to go there and just park in between it. Like, what was the point in him going there? Doesn't mention the missing person and the missing children. Lies to him about looking for a crescent wrench. It's just not making sense to me. I don't know.
Know his name.
Okay.
But I did sign his JSA.
Okay. Is that what this is?
I signed electronically. He just handed it to me and said, sign this. Because it's his JSA. So you're supposed to go through the steps in order to pull procedures. Yes, that's exactly what that is.
Okay. So this thing here has a list of all these questions that And who filled all this out?
He would have.
He did.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is something he fills out every time he goes
You're
on
supposed
site.
to. Every time you go, well, not every time you go on a site, but if you're pouring a load of water, you know, like if they're just driving up on a site, they don't have to pull one out. But if you're doing any kind of work that's outside the realm of normal activity, but for them, that's their job. So they're required to fill out a JSA for Anadarko.
Okay.
So they have to fill out the JSA and they have to go through their job steps and everything. When we're pulled up, he had his vent line and everything in the right direction. You know, he had it vented away from his truck, you know, and the wind wasn't blowing toward his pickup or nothing like that.
Where is he parked when you get here?
He is parked, okay, your water pit's right here.
Yep.
He is parked right here.
Is that a normal place for him to park?
Yeah, that's a normal place, I would say, for him to park. So he can, because I believe you have to go over the top to pull these open top pits. So he would just put his load line inside that pit right there and then pull out the sludge.
Okay.
And he was hauling this load to the OPF.
Where?
The OPF, the oil polishing facility.
Okay. Where's that at?
That's on County Road.
And now when Troy talks, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo because he mixes in a lot of, you know, oil talk and all that stuff. But when you really listen, you start to realize like his stories are all over the place. And like Wanderer said, it's not hard to get your story straight when it's the truth. Troy can't remember what he's supposed to say. And just like NK, he sounds like he's full of pure crap. As Hockett said, he knew it would take him an hour there and an hour back before he went out there. Are you referring to Watts? Yeah, Troy Boy has always been suspicious to me. A lot of people say that, and we just can't figure out why. Oh, Troy McCoy, you were talking about? Okay. Yes. I see what you're saying. Yes, to pretty much to confuse them with the technical lingos. I think so too. In fact, a lot of his interview is about like the technical lingos. Doing it on Anadarko time card, yeah. Troy is the guy who said bypass line about 100 times. Yeah.
Road 49.
Okay. Where do you park when you pull up on Tuesday?
When I pulled up on Tuesday, I went right by him, right over here. And I pulled up right about here on the location.
And so this officer who's interviewing him knows exactly where he parked because he has the information from Detective Baumhover, who got the information from the water truck guy. So he's interviewing Troy acting dumb. He knows this stuff. Like when he brought up the GSA, he's like, this right here. And Troy's like, yes, I signed that. So he, you know, the officer is 2 steps ahead.
Location.
Okay.
And then he walked over from his pickup before I ever even got out of my truck, and he was right here. And I signed the JSA right there.
Okay. Did he ask you what you were doing?
Yeah, and I told him I was looking for a crescent wrench.
Okay. But that was bullshit.
Well, I didn't, just because things have been so out of sorts, I wanted to, you know, to go out here to see if I seen anything because I've spoken to the officer too.
Okay. When you remember what?
And that right there was a lie. He didn't speak with the officer yet. The officer called him and left a voicemail. Troy did not call him back. He went out to Serby 319. And then he calls him back after he was there. And things were so out of sorts. So why didn't you go to Serby 1029, where you initially in this beginning of this interview, you said that you thought maybe he was burying evidence with his poop out there?
What the officer's name that you spoke to?
I got a voicemail. And I spoke to him at like 2:04. But, you know, things in my head weren't adding up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes out to Serby 319 around 1 because he said he got done with this training around 1. And now he just told the officer he called the other officer back at 2:19 or whatever. That's after you went out and signed this form and you were blocking the view of the shallow grave.
In my eyes. So I do have a voicemail from him. Tuesday, Hudson, Colorado. Okay, here's the voicemail then. I didn't delete it.
At what time?
He called me earlier when we were training.
Troy McCoy. This is Officer Walgie with the Frederick Police Department. I was wondering if you could give me a call
Replay
back.
that part again. Can you replay that first part again?
Officer Walgie.
Hello, this message is for Troy McCoy. This is Officer Walgie with the Frederick Police Department. I was wondering if you could give me a call back on my cell. It's 303-500-4073. Again, that's 303-500-4073. I was calling you with regard to, we're working on trying to find a missing person. And I was going to ask you, Christopher Watts, I believe that you work with him, gave your name as someone that he was going to meet yesterday in the early morning, possibly would meet, or that you work out at a site where he was going to be working. So anyway, he gave your name. I just wanted to talk to you. A couple questions with regard to Chris, and that would be it. So if you can give me a call again, Officer Walgie, W-A-L-J-E of the Frederick Police Department. If you feel more comfortable,
Yeah, really.
you can certainly call the police department. I'm currently here, I should say. And I can talk to you at the office if you feel more comfortable calling that number. But again, my cell is 303-500-4073 in case I have to leave. Thank you. Good night.
All right, thanks.
Yep, no problem.
Did you know that the water guy was going to be out there?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, the water guy was out there. Well, Cody Roberts told me that he was going to have the load bottomed out at Survey. And then he also told me that the load line was leaking on the tank.
Okay.
Here he goes with all the oil lingo and throwing out other names. Well, Cody Roberts told me that. Did you know the oil guy or the water truck guy was going to be there or not? Oh, no, I didn't. I don't believe that. I think that he got that voicemail from law enforcement, got nervous, and knew that he needed to get out to Survey for whatever reason, whether it was to plant evidence, hide evidence, stage evidence, prevent water truck guy from seeing the shallow grave. I don't know, but there's something about Troy that just has never sat right with me. And, as soon as he gets put on the spot about things in all his interviews, he just starts shooting out all this like oil site, like lingo to, distract or whatever, confuse. When anyone goes to a well site like 319, any workers like water truck or vacuum trucks, they all have to be signed in and out. That's what they do here in Canada. Not sure if it's the US rules or not. They know who's coming and going, so Troy lied. Yeah, we know that was a planned thing. Like it wasn't like the water truck guy got up that day and was like, oh, I guess I got to go here. Like it was a scheduled thing. And I believe we find that out in Cody Roberts' interview.
Because that load line is leaking on the tank that was almost full.
That was on Tuesday, or was that another day?
I think it was on Tuesday. And he called me and told me that they were going to have that pit bottomed out. And I think the water truck told me that he got like 15 or 20 barrels of oil out of there, or not oil, but water. And then he pulled the rest of the oil and stuff, BS&W that was on top of the tank.
Okay. So is it normal for you to sign this? If you show up on site when they're on site,
yes, you have to sign that.
You have to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so you pull up around here, or approximately here,
Yeah.
He comes over before you're even out of your car. or
Yeah,
you're
before I even get out of my pickup.
Okay. Do you ever get out of your pickup?
Yes.
Okay. Well, do you walk around, take a
No,
look?
I mean, whenever I get out of the pickup to talk to him,
Okay.
because he's walking, he's walking up and he's right here by my truck. So I get out, and everything and talk with him. And then he told me, that he's here to full load and everything like that. And I need to sign his JSA, and the screen is scratched to hell on that JSA. You couldn't read nothing if you wanted to. So I input my name, and then I asked him, I said, where do I sign, sir? So I handed it back to him. He handed it back to me after he got me to the screen where I needed to sign. And then I signed my name.
Okay. All right. Then, so does he leave? Or I'm sorry, go back to his truck?
Yes, sir. He went back to his truck. And then
what do?
I get back in my truck because then I looked at the clock and it's already freaking like 2:04 around that time period. So I'm going to go ahead and get back in my truck and I just leave location.
Okay. So you were there for what, 5-10 minutes at most?
I wasn't there. No, sir. I wasn't there very long at all.
Okay.
And the gentleman told me that if he found my crescent wrench, that he would lay it up on, the battery or the tank or the separator.
But there was no missing crescent wrench. So why are you even throwing that information in, Troy? And the gentleman told me that if he found my crescent wrench, that he would set it up on. Okay, but remember you lied and said that you were out there looking for a crescent wrench when you were really out there looking to see if there was anything suspicious because you were suspicious of Chris all of a sudden, even though earlier you said that you were suspicious of Chris at a different well site because he took a poop and you thought that he was burying other things with his poop. It's just not making sense. Is anyone else confused by this? Florida said, I'm 99% sure Chris didn't take the girls to Survey. I think they were killed on Monday and dumped by an accomplice when their plan was botched by Nicole Atkinson. I think so too. I don't think it happened before all the coworkers showed up Monday morning. And that's what the district attorney's theory was. And it's simply a theory. It's not fact. Once Chris leaves Anadarko and goes home, anything could have been happening at those oil tanks by other people. It doesn't take the blame off of Chris. It just means that the story is much deeper than we thought. Wasn't he worried he'd get fired for not doing detective work? Yeah, right? He's just like, oh, let me just stop out here on the clock. Yeah, how stupid to dump the bodies where he worked. He wanted to remember them every day. Why? While he was at work, or he was hoping to move the bodies later again. I just don't think he did the dumping, honestly. I think he's a part of it, but I don't think that he did the disposals. Maybe Chris just said something like, I'm in trouble or something bad happened to Shanann, etc. Yeah, he gets annoyed when he gets caught in a lie. Who drives 45 minutes to look for a wrench when Anadarko probably has 800 wrenches on the location? Right. Why was he even out there? And then he tells this guy that, oh no, I wasn't out there long. So then why were you out there? Chris is taking a poop? Yes. The Monday when Nicole Atkinson's showing up at the house and everything's, falling apart, Troy says that they were at a survey site together, 10:29, and Chris had to go poop, and he buried the poop. There's pictures of it in the discovery. And Troy says, I started getting suspicious that, maybe he was burying evidence with that poop. But yet he shows up to the site that their bodies are at to look for evidence and not the site that the poop was at. It's weird. Agree, Florida, on wrench and the botched plan. I don't think Chris had anything to do with the girls, in my opinion. Right. I mean, that's how I feel. And of course, it's just an opinion. He's to blame for them, but I think they were collateral damage, and he only planned to kill Shanann. Don't know, though. And it's the thing, is we'll never know. Yeah, something went wrong with Shanann's disposal. Panic. Yeah, It was barely a deep grave at all. She was barely covered. There was like inches of dirt on her, in her grave. What is your theory or who you believe did the disposal? It's hard to say, like, and I can't 100% say who, but the way that Chris, for example, in his interview, he says, underneath the fitted sheet that they would find the children's clothing items and toys, and they weren't out there. They weren't under the sheet. He didn't even know what the scene looked like. There's other examples too. Him stating that Shanann's eyes filled with blood, and then the autopsy says no, that they weren't. They were still white. They couldn't get Shanann's password into her phone, right? Which she had just changed. Also, people who dispose of or are near the oils, or people who open those tanks, can get sick. The only people who mentioned being sick were Nicholkessinger and her friend Jim. Okay, good night, Dustin. Most oil field workers have all the tools they need, right? Yeah, so he didn't wash his hands, right? And what did he use to clean up? You know what I mean? Sorry, there's a lot of gross aspects in this case. Chris was almost glowing with happiness in his porch interview. I can't imagine him doing that to the girls and then grinning on TV, but who knows? And you'll have people who say, well, he's a sociopath, he's a psychopath, blah, blah, blah. And they could be right, you know? May I ask, is it the general consensus here that Chris had help? Press 1 in chat if you think Chris had help. Press 2 if you think it was all him alone. Hi, Jess. Good to see you. Shanann was in a fetal position from being in the trunk of a car for a while and rigor mortis setting in. If Chris had dumped her, she would have sprawled out because rigor mortis hadn't set in yet. Also a good theory. In the interview, he didn't seem sure whether the girls were still alive or not. I agree, Tony. I feel like her grave was temporary. When they were going to explode the batteries, her body would have been placed in the Lexus on site. Yeah, I think that she was in a trunk, like Florida Bass Fishing said, was going to be placed in the Lexus. Nicole Atkinson showed up. They couldn't get the Lexus. They couldn't follow through with the plan. So they dumped her in the shallow grave, which was dug in very quickly and not deep at all. The more and more I read, but I'm still not convinced he was okay with Shanann being killed. He does have no remorse for his family, and he definitely could be a sociopath, but I'm not sure that he killed his kids. So we got 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Lots of ones. Marco says 2, that he acted alone. Hard 1 from Unravel. Johnny says 2. He's always felt 2, which is fine. I love everyone's perspective. And one thing I love about, Johnny's and other moderators of mine and people that I research cases with is we don't always see the same things, So I appreciate differences. Definitely think that there was more 1s in chat than 2s. Yeah, Paula says, watch the videos of him with those kids. Right. And you'll have people, Paula, who will say, well, he was acting. He wears many faces. And I think that those can be true as well, that he was acting and that he does wear many faces, but I still don't think that he killed his kids. And remember, before he signed the plea deal, agreeing that he killed everybody, he stayed saying, I didn't kill my kids. He never once in the first confession said, yes, I killed my kids. The media reported that he confessed to it all, which was a lie. You have to be careful with the media. But if you listen to his interview, he blamed it on Shanann, which of course people will say, well, yeah, he did it himself, so he just blamed it on Shanann. But that's not the only scenario. Could have been somebody else, and he was just protecting that. I think Chris loved his girls, but not so much Shanann. Agree. He had resentment against her. He was done with her. I mean, clearly he's having an affair. Marco, there has been talk from inmates that have spoken to Chris in private that have said, like, Chris told me that his mistress had something to do with the children. And now you could say, well, those are just other inmates who are degenerates themselves. You know? The thing about Chris is he's a coward. He will never tell the truth.
Okay.
So,
All right. Did you have a chance to look out in this direction at all?
no, sir, I
He
didn't.
was just on you that quick.
Yeah, he was just right there next to me. So
Okay.
I was like, okay. And that's good too, because they're supposed to be able to approach people.
Mhm.
You know, as soon as they see somebody pull up on location, they will approach you.
Okay.
You know,
Here's Troy's talking about water truck guys. Well, that's good that they stop just talking about nonsense. You're trying to distract from the fact that you were acting weird out there, lying to the water truck guy. It's just so, ugh. Okay, Miranda said, the only thing that gets me is why did he say the whole thing about the blanket? And Bella saying, Daddy, no. Seems weird that he would make all that up if he didn't do it himself. So I know, definitely see what you're saying. There are statements that Chris says that I feel like are part of the truth. I think there's truth sprinkled in a lot of his lies. Bella saying, Daddy, no, I think really did happen, but I don't think it had anything to do with him killing her. I think it was he was leaving her with somebody else and she was saying, Daddy, no. And then he never saw her again. They were collateral damage. I do think that the daddy no part sounds very truthful. The thing about the blankets is he also said he strangled them and they weren't strangled. They were smothered. Also, the thing about the blankets is in the autopsies, you won't find any fibers in any of these, their breathing ways. So when you put a blanket over a child's head and mouth and nose, there will be fibers found, and there was none found. So I just think there's truth, but there's also lies that are just, I don't know. I don't believe the whole blanket over the head thing. I think very few others know exactly what happened, but we will never know, right? And that's the thing is any theory you guys have, I can't say, no, that's not true. I'll just tell you my opinion. And I don't know if my opinion's right. Chris tells partial truths. Rourke, who's the district attorney, such a hack. All these people of Weld County demanding he does his job yet. Nope. No, they are not. Let's hope he tells the truth. I just don't think so. He's changed his confession so many times. The thing about I don't think Shanann's body was in that truck. The cadaver dog never alerts to death in the truck, the house, or the garage. So I don't think that I think she left out back in another vehicle, personally. Sedated. And now many people will say, oh, well, cadaver dogs can't pick up a smell of death that soon, so she was taken out quicker than that. The ride from the house to Survey is over 45 minutes. So if she was dead in that truck, a cadaver dog 100% would have been able to tell. I also think Bella was saying daddy no because she was scared of somebody else. Me too. I think somebody was taking her from Chris. Chris was leaving her. Yes, it's very hard to believe anything Chris said and still says. I don't think he's capable of telling the truth. He's not. He's really not. And the thing too is like people will say, well, he said he did it. But he's a liar. So how can he, and he said he's done it so many different ways. Which way did it happen? They had two Yankees blankets, Allison. So one of them is missing and then the other one is at the house. So each girl had their own Yankees blanket. Yeah, we'll never understand it because we're different from him, right? The cadaver dog didn't enter the truck, but it smelled around it. And if you reference the Madeline McCann case, the dog just smelled around the truck and still can alert to death. So a cadaver dog can alert to death even under like 10 feet of ice. They don't need to enter the vehicle for them to smell death. You guys know that dogs' noses are just superpowers. So the reason why they didn't enter the truck is because they would have needed a warrant from Anadarko, which the Anadarko would have gladly given. But they were so quick in their investigation with the dogs on day, I think, 2, that they didn't wait for the warrant and they did it without opening the truck doors because they don't need to open the truck doors for it. So the dogs don't need to enter it to smell death. There's no way you can put 150 pounds of dead weight into a truck without having to go around the other side to pull her. Yeah, exactly. You don't see a shadow of him lifting her up. You don't see him dragging her. You don't see the shocks of the truck weighed down. Like, she never left in that truck. The children left alive in the truck because we see the shadow of him picking up one of them and placing them in there. Yeah, I think so too, M. Johnson. She said, I think what really happened and all the details would blow everyone's mind, honestly. There wouldn't be any proof of anyone else doing it because the investigation ended. They never ran DNA. They never finished running fingerprints, etc. So unfortunately, in most cases, if an investigation was completed, I would say, yeah, you know, they checked this, they checked that, they looked at this person, that person, they ran this forensics, and it's not pointing to anyone but Chris. But in this case, because of the plea deal, nothing was finished. She wasn't put in the truck. I feel she was taken out the back by someone else. Me too. It just makes me mad. And hello, Cindy. Good to see you. It just makes me mad when I watch all these crime shows and they're so careful with gloves and everything they did. None of that in this case. Right. Even the stuff that they took out of the house. Somebody, I don't want to put your name out there, but somebody sent me a PayPal, and thank you so much because it has your guys' name, and I know that your names are different on YouTube, so I don't want to say your name on here, but I got a $20 PayPal, and I just want to thank you if you're still listening in chat. But yeah, when they take the evidence out of the house, like the sheets and stuff, they put it in a plastic bag, garbage bags. Everything's supposed to be handled in paper bags. Yes, there are so many liars in this case. The district attorney, NK, the mistress, Chris, the main suspect and culprit of everything, Troy McCoy, so many people lying. And remember, the district attorney's theory changed. First, he said everyone died in the house. And then once people started seeing the footage from Nate's camera and they see Chris pick up a child and the shadow walk underneath the truck, you can see him bend down and pick up a little one. All of a sudden, the district attorney says, well, all right. The kid's actually left alive and he killed them at the oil site. It's like, well, which is it? That's a theory that he put stuff in the dumpster. We never got that proven, but definitely a theory. All right. Should we proceed a little bit more with this Troy McCoy interview before we close out? There's a lot of good comments in the chat, but we got to finish this.
They're supposed to. That's what they're supposed to do. So I wasn't shocked to see him or nothing like that, but he was just right there at the pickup. So I signed the JSA, and, you know, because in my heart of hearts, I didn't want to believe that Chris had done anything. You know, I've been his friend for 2.5 years, you know, but with Shanann not getting back to anybody, you know, even like calling her parents and just being like, hey, you know, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm safe and sound. Bella and the kids are with me. We're good. You know, I was like, that was the location that he was at that morning. So that's why I went out there, because, you know, everybody's looking for clues and tips, anything that can help. And I honestly just want to help.
And something's needling you about this.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, you know, I didn't say it in our first interview, but the clothes, it was just different to me. And then whenever
I didn't say it in our first interview, but the clothes. And the officer's like, yeah, why didn't you say it in the first interview? And honestly, I just want to help. Well, then why didn't you call the officer back? Or spread the word of the missing pregnant mother and her 2 kids when you had the opportunity with the water truck guy who was out there?
told you about how he walked by the back of his truck, it was odd. And then now all of a sudden I find out, you know, the next day that his girls are gone and there's a missing persons report and everything for him. Nobody's heard nothing from him. You know, I'm a father. If my wife was gone and everything like that, I'd be freaking out. You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, he's just like, hey guys, I gotta go. You know, it wasn't like necessarily like a panic whenever he took
There's
off.
no
that
urgency
day.
to it.
You know, but he's like, hey, you know, I just gotta go. And that's all he said. Because he rolled down his window and he pulled up to Chad McNeil's pickup that day. And he's like, hey guys, I gotta go. You know, something's not right at home. And then he drove off.
How did he drive?
And he just pulled away normal. It wasn't like he was in a fire rush, you know. If I had my friends calling me and telling me, you know, or my wife's friends that my wife was missing and my 4 kids weren't at home, I'd be freaking out, honestly.
Pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Why did you park there?
Because that's where I seen him parked.
Okay. And when the oil and water guy approached you, why didn't
Remember, he's parked right next to the shallow grave. The officer wants to know, why'd you park there? Because that's where he parked. Oh, okay, yeah. We'll just blame it on because Chris Watts parked there. Like, why does that kind of correlate to each other? Why would you have to park where Chris parked? And the water truck guy says, like, yeah, I never seen an oil worker park there before. It's an odd spot, but you did it because Chris did it? And it just happens to block the view from anyone seeing that shallow grave.
you just keep looking around like you originally intended?
After he approached me and everything, because I was looking at the clock, because I need to be off somewhere close to the time frame, like 2:30ish and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I can actually get home, because I live in Greeley, and from Greeley to Surrey is a heck of a long drive, you know, and my wife babysits and everything else. So I want to get home whenever it's close to time, because I'm not trying to milk the clock, get any extra overtime or anything like that.
Right.
So after he approached me, we talked for, you know, just a couple minutes and everything.
You know, Troy is such a good co-worker, or good Anadarko worker. He's not trying to milk the clock or anything.
Like that, he told me that if he found my crest branch, that he'd put in a tank battery for me, and that was it. I got right back in my pickup. I drove around slowly to the location, you know, drove around the edge of the location right here. I just drove around right here, you know, and then just went ahead and took off.
Okay. Why didn't you tell him the truth?
Because I didn't want to tell him that I was searching for any kind of suspicious things on location.
What would have been wrong with that, though, if you had just said that?
Well, I know, but I mean, at the time, whenever I was approached, that's what I said, honestly.
Okay.
And here the officer asked him, like, well, why did you lie to him? You know, like, well, because I didn't want him to know that I was looking for anything suspicious out there. But why would that have been wrong to say? Well, I don't know, but I just, you know, why? Why can't you just answer? Honestly. Yeah, exactly. Honestly. No, Troy, you're not being honest. And unfortunately, like nothing comes of this because they have the confession. They got Chris in custody. I mean, these officers, I believe, are Frederick. They're not CBI or FBI. Could be wrong there.
I mean, I'm not here to lie to you guys. You know, I'm upfront and honest about it. Obviously, you guys know I was there, and I've got no problem telling you exactly why I was on location.
I'm upfront and honest about it. You know, I'm not here to lie to you guys. I was there. You guys know I was there. We only know you were there because the water truck guy said you were there because you didn't mention this when we first interviewed you. Okay.
So,
did you talk to your wife about this on Monday when you got home?
well, yeah, because Shanann and Juanita, you know, do the Thrive thing. Because Juanita's a promoter as well, but she's never even hit her 4K on that. You know, and it just doesn't feel right. You know, for those girls just to disappear and Shanann to disappear, and she's such a public person and everything like that. So the wife was worried about them. She wanted to make sure that they were going to be okay as well.
What was your conversation about? Tell me, not necessarily about, tell me what was your conversation like? Were you guys, you know, convinced something had happened or just a little bit concerned?
Well, we were concerned because, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities if they were having issues, you know, and she wanted to leave, if that was the case, for her to take the girls, because I figured she would, you know, and go ahead and go off to a friend's house, because he told me that he thought Shanann had went to a friend's house that morning. So
Chris told you that?
Yeah, it wasn't nothing out of the norm, you know, like she goes over to friend's house and stuff all the time. But that's what I told my wife. I was like, well, I don't know if she took off, went to a friend's house, you know, whatever the case. And then later on in the day, we found out the cell phone was still there, you know, and everything, the purse, all that kind of stuff. And then it just didn't start adding up. You know, you never want to think that one of your coworkers would be capable of doing something like that to a person, you know, anything. And then.
So at what point do you start to think that Chris has done something?
Well, the only part I start to think would be Wednesday, because I drove out to location. You know, I wasn't out there very long on Tuesday.
See, that makes no sense. The only time that I thought I started to think that Chris did something was on Wednesday. So then why on Tuesday did you say that you were suspicious enough to go out there when the water truck guy was there to look for evidence and to help? And then you also said that on Monday when he took a dump out there, you thought that he might be burying evidence with his dump. But now you're saying Wednesday was when you started to think that something was suspicious. It just doesn't make sense. Who does Troy think he would know what Shanann would and wouldn't do? Right.
Didn't see anything out of the norm while I was there, but I really didn't look around. You know, I was just got back on my pickup and drove off. And then Wednesday, I didn't text him at all. Nothing. I didn't, you know, try to check on him, anything. And then, okay, then Wednesday would be the day that you guys called me, roughly around 10 o'clock.
Yeah, something like that, I think it was.
And then I come back to the office and have a talk with you, Joe.
Were you out at this location ever again after Tuesday?
No, sir, I wasn't. Never again.
Do you know who else has been out at that location since
Cody
they?
Roberts was out at that location on Tuesday. He had to do something out there. I think Cody Roberts was out there though.
Sure.
And this is the shallow grave before she was taken out, obviously. So I'm not going to finish this whole interview. I think that we've gotten to the point about the water truck, Troy being out there. I'll play it for a couple more minutes.
Remember about what time?
No, sir, I don't. That's just from Cody talking to me and telling me that he was on location.
Okay. What about Melissa or Chad or anybody like that? Did they ever go back to 319?
Well, I think Melissa would have been back out there because Melissa's been shadowing Cody.
Okay.
Because Cody starts automation cross training next week.
Okay.
So that's the whole reason why Melissa was out there anyway.
Right.
Because she's not the normal operator. She's just a trainee that just got signed off on her SOPs, standard operating procedures.
Mhm.
And then now we're feeling comfortable enough to let her run a route and see how she does.
Okay.
So that just happened to be a particular route when she drew.
Okay. Would there be any reason for anybody to drive out here in the weeds?
No, sir.
Right.
There'd be no reason at all for anybody to do that.
Is that permitted? You guys get
No.
busted for that?
No, yeah. You like whenever you're out of Soybean Ranch, if you read that sign, it's posted by that gate.
Oh yeah, it's got the
You
rules
stay
on
on the
it.
ranch
Yeah.
road.
Sorry.
You don't want to be caught outside of those ranch on the leash roads that are out there because you will get your butt ripped.
Yeah.
I mean, most of our landowners that we have are like that.
Yeah, sure.
You know, even Mr. Batting is that way.
All right, everybody. Again, Troy is somebody that we will definitely do a designated deep dive into. This, I kind of wanted to just point out the red flags and oddities of people being at the crime scene before the bodies were discovered. Of course, Troy is tied into that, and the water truck guy's statement was tied into that. The water truck guy had no idea what was out there. He's just doing his job, minding his own business. He is the reason that law enforcement find out that Troy was out there. If they never interviewed the water truck guy and the water truck guy was never out there, would we have ever found out that Troy went back out there? Or was Troy out there because the water truck guy was there and he's like, oh gosh, I don't want him to see the shallow grave. Again, this is all opinion, speculation, conjecture. It's really all we have without a trial in this case, without these questions kind of ironed out. And I just really appreciate everybody being here tonight, being open-minded. Yeah, that's the thing, is a lot of people feel that way too, Johnny. Like, why would these coworkers be involved? Blah, blah, blah. You have to kind of believe the explosion theory. If you're not on board with the explosion theory, it really doesn't make sense that coworkers would be involved. But yes, I appreciate everybody being here. Troy would have never been interviewed if water truck guy hadn't said something. Right. And he was interviewed, but he left out all this information. So it's crazy. It's absolutely wild. Again, thank you everyone who donated memberships, donated PayPal, super chats, super stickers. Just hit the like button. I really appreciate you guys. Cindy said this case makes my head spin, but yet I'm so obsessed with it. And then I can go over this stuff over and over, and it just frustrates me more and more because I'm like, I want to know why were there inconsistencies, blah, blah, blah. But I enjoy going over it with you guys. So appreciate you guys. So like I said, we want to kind of dig into the Sarah Boone case. Yeah, that's the thing, is if he got part of the explosion deal or whatever lawsuit they were going to, and wrongful death lawsuit and insurance money, all that, it would have been worth it for somebody like Troy to kind of get money. But that never happened because the explosion never happened. So it's kind of one of those theories that you kind of have to, money is the root of all evil. I'll just leave it at that. Hello, Lady Sarah. I saw you come in, but I appreciate you guys all being here and everyone's difference in opinions. And I just, again, we'll never know the full truth, but we'll just keep digging and trying to figure it out, I guess. So tomorrow I wanted to do a Sarah Boone deep dive, but I just seen that Sebastian Rogers' father had an interview on Court TV. So we might do a Sebastian Rogers live stream tomorrow night and then start the Sarah Boone deep dive next week. Her trial is coming up. So we kind of want to just refresh on things there before the trial starts. I'm just reading your guys' comments because I could talk about this case all night with you guys, but got to get going. So again, hit that like button if you haven't done so. Appreciate you guys. We will talk very soon, actually tomorrow night. Join me tomorrow night to talk about other cases. Then we'll take the break for the weekend, come back Monday and deep dive some more. And I will see you guys tomorrow night or maybe even before then in other people's chats. And again, thank you so much. Bye.